Welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. This is your host, Shane Bailey. We've made some last-minute additions, so we'll get around to some introductions here. But want to kick off and start off by saying thank you all so much for listening in to the SEC Sports Roundtable. We're going to get some of the housekeeping stuff out of the way. If you're not listening to us on Stitcher Radio, make sure you're out there finding us there. We're also on Twitter at SECSRT. We're on Facebook at just look up SECSRT there or SEC Sports Roundtable. Drew's shaking his head no there, but yes. We're on iTunes, of course. You've got to be there. That's the staple. A new addition to a new way to listen to us and find us is on Facebook. We actually have our podcasts posted there, so if you don't have the ability to go to iTunes at work, or you can get on Facebook at work and want to listen to it straight from Facebook, we have that built in now. That you can stream and listen to the podcast there right on Facebook on our Facebook page, just right in the middle of our news. So if you go to the Facebook page, you can find us there. Am I missing anywhere? Of course, the website, SECSRT.com. You can go there also to see our picks. We'll talk about those for a minute later in the podcast, but we throw out our weekly picks. We're now in basketball season only, so we're going to see some SEC basketball picks out there. We are only picking the SEC matchup, so there's a few games from this week that we omitted on our picks. But that's why if you go looking for, you Tennessee fans out there, go looking to see who we picked against UConn. That's why that game's not out there, as well as the Arkansas game. But otherwise, we do all the SEC matchups there. On the picks. Did I get all the housekeeping that I said we always leave to the end? Did I get all that out of the way up front?
I think so.
All right. Well, the one that introduced himself there with a think so is Blair Smiley. Welcome, Blair.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad
to be back.
Glad to have you here. Sporting the Sam Adams hat. I think we've talked about them trying to be a sponsor.
I would love that.
You're pimping that. They've got their new spring brew coming out pretty soon, so excited about that. Proudly wearing his orange is our main co-host, Drew Young.
Shane, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here today as opposed to weeks in the past when it's sadder news for the Big Orange.
Well, I'm glad that you've got something cheerful to talk about in Big Orange Nation this week. And a newcomer to the round table, Mr. Neil Medley.
Greetings.
Greetings and salutations.
Well, thank you for having me.
We expect great prose to come from your lips.
Yeah.
Being a singer-songwriter in Nashville, Tennessee, we expect great things coming from your mouth today. We're not setting that bar high enough, are we?
No, especially with just an hour notice.
No.
I'm just glad to be here. Hope I can contribute.
We're so glad to have a full round table and your presence with us here.
Just what the round table needs, another Kentucky fan. So
yeah,
let's see what we can do.
I'll say I've been very good at keeping that very low. There's only been one other Kentucky fan, and he did a basketball podcast doing our basketball preview, and I think he did a pretty unbiased job on that. But I think we did the West that day. So
yeah, exactly.
You mean there's other teams in the SEC other than Kentucky? Oh goodness,
he's got jokes.
Well, let's get things started off from the news standpoint. In the SEC, there's not any, I think, but from a football world, I think we lost a great coaching legend this morning before the podcast and the passing of Joe Paterno. So our hearts go out to you Penn State fans. You've got a lot of turmoil and things that you're dealing with out there. So our hearts go out to you, but we're not going to dwell on that. That's not SEC country. So other than that, we feel sorry for your loss. And recruiting news, that's where we're going to talk in the football arena. Spend a few minutes talking some recruiting news. For those who are into that, we're just a couple weeks away from signing day. 2 weeks, T-minus 14 days or so. What's the actual dates? Anyone know?
It's the
first Wednesday in
in
February. So
that's going to be
I
the
think
third or something.
I think we're looking at what, 10 days?
Yeah, a week and a half.
Yeah.
So because we're recording on a Sunday, so we're just about a week and a half away from signing day in football, and as expected, I guess Alabama is a clear /1 favorite.
They're all across the board in every major reporting, with whether it's Scout or 24/7 or Rivals or ESPN. They're #1 across the board, but it's tough because they have 27 commitments, which there's a lot being said about that. I know there's a new rule in the SEC where you can only have 25 commits, so I don't know if they expect 2 of them to gray shirt or drop off or whatnot. But 27 commitments, they've kind of outpaced everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting this year because I think if you look at Mississippi State, currently they have 25 commitments, but 3 of those are already in school that didn't sign that actually backdate. So they could actually sign what I guess the scouting reports would actually show is 28 this year, but this is the first year that you can only sign up to 25, I believe, in the SEC, which last year was up to 28. So there was a partial oversigning, not as crazy as the Houston Nutt rule that was in affected, where he signed, I think, 39 that year.
And that's just an SEC rule. That's not a NCAA
Yeah,
rule.
well, most other, like the Big Ten's always abided by 25 for some reason. And so the SEC, of course, is notorious for the oversigning. And so this year it's going to be kind of interesting with that in place because I think starting this February and going forward, 25 is the most you can sign. So those 2 or 3 possible studs that are out there that are kind of borderline academic issues, you can't save a spot or hide those or have a chance to take a kid that you know is going to go into JUCO or need to go to a prep school and place them, like they've done before. I think it's going to be interesting here in the last 10 days because I think we were talking about before. I think you might see some moving around. The reason we got off on this topic earlier was because there's a pretty big running back, I think, in Alabama that's been committed for a year and a half that is now being told that he might be in his best options to look around. So you're starting to see that from a Nick Saban where before he could just wait till after signing day and tell him to gray shirt or something like that if the numbers didn't work out. So I know LSU's been in that situation where they've had kids that have actually gotten to the dorm room and then kind of basically were told, we don't have a spot for you. So it kind of keeps all that under wraps, and I think it's a good thing going forward.
Yeah, I know that's the main reason they did it, was to keep the teams from just recruiting and getting a lot of people and telling them, hey, we got a spot for you, and then clearly not having a scholarship for them or a place for them to play. So a good rule when you know Houston Nutt's the guy that's going to ruin it for everybody and sign 35 players. So thanks, Houston. Good luck wherever you may fall.
Yeah. Well, and from my standpoint of it, I think from a kid's standpoint, I guess, is where it really helps out, is that it provides a little more certainty, because that's been a growing problem in the recruiting world, is you get, basically these false promises, promise the world, and you get there and say, oh yeah, it's not exactly, how we planned this out for you. We're going to need you to do this and that, and all of a sudden they're jumping through a bunch of hoops. So it is going to provide a little more clarity in the SEC. What is still yet to be seen is how well it's going to be enforced, and what loopholes they're going to be able to come up with to get those extra players in.
Yeah, it's going to be it's kind of interesting because you have to manage that 85 number, and that's one of the things that's very difficult. I know it's something that Derek Dooley's having to kind of deal with regards to Tennessee, because I believe if they actually sign 25 players, they still have about 7 spots that they got to figure out an overage for. So a lot of those guys have that problem. I think the problem with the student side of it is if I'm a stud running back and I commit to Alabama a year and a half out and I'm committed, when I kind of take a look at it from Dan Mullen's standpoint, because I follow Mississippi State, his whole thing is a commitment. They're a reservation if they're taking other school visits. So he doesn't really consider them a commit until they basically commit to Mississippi State, and that's their only visit. If they're actually visiting other schools, he considers it more of a reservation, and he has a little bit of play there. But if I'm a kid that's committed for a year and a half and that's it, and then all of a sudden 3 weeks beforehand, when he's been shutting off other coaches or not keeping that line of communication open, now this kid's hadn't reopened his recruitment 2 weeks before, or he just stays with Alabama and sees what happens. So it can kind of play both sides, I think. And so you kind of got to watch it, I think.
I guess, yeah, from the player side, you're going to eliminate some of that, bringing out all the hats and the drama, because you're going to –
and the puppy dogs.
The puppy dogs.
Like I did last year.
Yeah, Kroll, yeah. I think it's ridiculous. You have these kids now that'll commit to somewhere, and then they go, well, it's close to signing day. I haven't had my chance to get a press conference, I want to do this, and they'll do it all over again. And you're like, whatever, just stick to it, do it once, or just don't do it at all. But who knows?
Well, let's kind of look at it. We're gonna. I mean, just take your pick. When we were talking about this in our prep work, take your pick on what site you want to use to look at these, because whether, I guess just find the site that has your team ranked the highest, and then that's your favorite. But, we've got to go with one here, and I'm looking at 24/7 Sports. It's a fairly new one by a bunch of the Rivals guys, and I think I do that only because, they're based here in the Middle Tennessee area. But they have 3 of the SEC teams in the top 10. Followed closely behind that, you'd say 4 in the top 12. Was it 6 in the top 20?
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So another huge year of recruiting in the SEC.
And then 8 in the top 20.
8 in the top 20. So,
I mean, that's just kind of the way it goes. It's tough. You can be 10th in the nation and 5th in the SEC. So it's not. I think what you have to look at now, coaching in the SEC, you can't look at overall rankings. You got to look where you stack up against the other SEC teams. Right. And if you're not in the top 3, 4, then you're getting beat, and you might be that means you might have the 6th best class in the nation, and you can't say you look at it as a failure, but you have to look at it as a missed opportunity because the teams ahead of you got better as well. So it's a tough thing to
because LSU is ranked 4th in the SEC in recruiting right now.
And recruiting is a different game, and we always got to remember that a kid that's a junior that's kind of comes out as a 2-star or 3-star, and all of a sudden you really need to take a look at their list of who their schools are. If they got an LSU, Alabama, USC, all of a sudden they pop in that 4-star, 5-star deal. I think so. You got to kind of. Not only do you have to rank it according to SEC schools, but you also kind of got to take a look at who you're actually competing against and the type of kids that you're picking up. I just know that Mississippi State's never – I mean, you may have a year where you jump into the top 15 because in state you have some pretty good kids. This year they've got the top half of the first 3 or 4 kids are very top-heavy, really good. But once you – get to those 20 kids in the state of Mississippi, they're not going to be sitting at a 4 and a 5-star.
I'm not a recruiting expert, but help me out here. Can't that also artificially inflate their numbers, their star ratings, if they get a couple of schools that's on their list?
I mean, that's the whole thing about Notre Dame and a lot of their recruiting classes. That's kind of the whole thing for the last decade was, if Notre Dame actually offers a kid, all of a sudden the star grade goes up, and that's before they kind of went on their downturn. But that's kind of always been the kind of the sticking point is that, if you've got the bigger schools, that automatically it's going to inflate you from a star rating standpoint because these guys, I mean, they're the best schools in the country, and they're going after this kid, if that makes any sense.
And here's my opinion. You've got guys like us that are running these rival sites. They're reporters, which I use that very loosely when I talk about us. But these are guys that just evaluate talent, and they've got a website. They're web designers. They're writers. They're bloggers. I think the true value of whether a guy should be ranked high or not is look at the offer sheet, and that's exactly what y'all are talking about. I say this for a couple reasons. I apologize, guys. I use Tennessee as an example, but that's what I know. So take a guy like Dalton Santos. He's a middle linebacker out of Texas. He's a 3-star right now, and you look at his offer sheet, and you've got he's committed to Tennessee. You've got Arkansas, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Missouri, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. I mean,
those are all bad schools.
I mean that's everybody you want. And here's the deal: if you've got defenses like Alabama and TCU and Oklahoma and then schools like Ohio State and Michigan and Georgia recruiting you, I mean, it's about as good as it gets. I mean, I don't know how that can be a 3-star. So
and what I think happens is that your players, there's only a limited. Obviously, we got depending on the site you're looking at, you got limited amount of 5 stars, 4 stars, and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like basketball used to be, where before the AAU came about, you had a hard time really determining who these players were. Now they're playing 100 games a year, and they're in this environment where their competition, they're better, they're easily able to come in at Kentucky as a freshman and actually dominate an SEC type of deal. I think we're getting that way in football. The problem is in basketball you got a little bit, you've got some issues with street agent type deals that are coming on. But with these 7-on-7 camps and the exposure that these kids are getting from an earlier age, from their sophomore, junior, and senior years, and all these camps that these schools are putting on, these kids are able to come in, I think, more prepared, and they're also able to pick a school that necessarily they wouldn't have just automatically gone to before because they were good. They're more looking for playing time and that type of stuff. So a lot of stuff kind of factors in that I don't necessarily think was the case 20 years ago.
Well, also what also gives them an advantage today that they didn't have, even 10 years ago or really 5 years ago is the internet. I mean, they can self-market themselves with YouTube clips, and I mean, anybody with a basic computer now can set up and make their own highlight reel and get it sent out. So it's made it easier for themselves to be self-promoting and their high school coaches to get out and help promote them and get their name out so that they can be seen by a lot of schools that they might not have gotten seen by before 10, 15 years ago.
That's exactly it. And I actually take a look, when I'm a Mississippi State fan, and if I was a Kentucky fan, I'd be the same way. I also try to take a look at, hey, what are the kids that we're recruiting and who are the schools with them? And if you look at the kids that Mississippi State actually has right now that they're in kind of the ball game with, there's a linebacker in Mississippi that actually just went on a visit at Tennessee. Tennessee's kind of all in a lot of the offers, and State's kind of competing with them, which you would have said 5 years ago. That wasn't the case. Mississippi State wasn't competing with Tennessee. So Tennessee's come down a little bit, I think, from a recruiting standpoint. They're still able to actually grab those high number of kids, but it means that for me, it gives me a little bit of, kind of joy, so to speak, that, hey, we may be going in the right direction, that now we're competing with a Tennessee instead of competing always with an Ole Miss, a UAB, a Texas Tech, something of that effect. So it's always intriguing. The recruiting atmospheres, it can get squirrely real quick, but it's always enjoyable looking at it.
Anything else before we close the book on our pre-signing day preview, I guess? That's what this turned into, I think.
I could talk recruiting all day. It's fun. I mean, I disagree with Blair. I
can't imagine why.
Let's hear it. It is, I've made no bones about it. That do I think Tennessee is on the decline a little bit? Yes, but when you look at recruiting, I just don't think you can really compare Mississippi State and Tennessee. Mississippi State absolutely.
I'm not comparing them at all.
They've gotten, they've won a couple head-to-head battles with the Nico Autry kid, the junior college player,
Will Redmond.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these guys that you're going to run into that every once in a while, but I mean, here's the problem with Tennessee is Tennessee has to go out of state on every recruit pretty much. So yeah, you're going to compete with. You don't want to compete with a North Carolina or you don't want to if you're a Tennessee type program you don't want to have to say you're competing with a Ole Miss or Mississippi State or any of these schools. But the truth of the matter is most of these guys that we're competing with, it's a kid is from that state,
right,
and you've got to overcome that. So it's a hard thing, and here's the thing about all these recruiting sites. We all use them, and they're fun to look at. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to put an objective measure, which is these star rankings, and it's completely subjective material that goes into it. I'll throw this out there, and I'm opening myself up to a can of worms because this is a tough thing for Tennessee fans. Tennessee just got a commitment from a player that Deion Bonner, he was arrested for stealing iPods during a recruiting visit to Georgia. I mean, which is, you'd think that's a pretty big red flag. But I mean, this guy was talked about as being one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the country. I mean, that's a 5-star type player. And now that, I mean, do I think you take a hit because of character? Absolutely. But now he's a 3-star on most people.
But and I think we kind of touched on this pre-show, that worked well for Cam Newton leaving Florida, going to JUCO and coming back to Auburn. I mean, for allegedly stealing a laptop, which, it's not an iPod or an iPad. They're not as cool as an iPad. So
they're not iPads or iPods.
iPods.
What is that? That's not even. That's not a big deal. I mean, it's still an iPod. I mean, we all steal iPods, right?
Oh yeah.
We wouldn't steal laptops though,
especially from future teammates.
Not anymore. Yeah, future enemies is what he's doing. He was setting it up, trying to get them mad, get in their head before the game next year.
So it's a little psychology. He's a psychology major.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he's. That's what he was thinking. Now, but just to finish my point, it's trying to use subjective material to create an objective measurable, and it's just not possible. But it sure as hell is fun to look at for me. In your downtime, you spend just hours and hours looking at these websites and reading about 17-year-old kids that you're decided to come to your school. It's a little sad when you think about it, but But that's just, I guess that's our life, right?
Right.
That's the life of the round table, and a lot of college football fans across the nation. So,
and I can assure you that it's much less. We're fine by just looking at these websites versus you've got schools like Alabama and well, I'm just going to use Alabama because they're poisoning trees and doing sexual acts on people.
And you're meaning the whole state, not just the fans of Alabama, right?
Well, it goes both ways, I'm sure, but
see, it's also Tennessee. Tennessee's got a unique scenario when you mentioned it because they basically have to do a national recruiting. But when you get Alabama and Auburn and they're going after an Alabama kid, it gets a little bit squirrely. I mean, it's the Ole Miss Mississippi State on a smaller level.
Wouldn't you love to sit in that kid's home a couple times?
Yeah, I mean, because you're talking about Tennessee. It may be that they actually compete with Vanderbilt, or they may go across the border and go into Georgia and try to compete with Georgia with a Georgia kid, or dip into Florida and do some of those types of things. But it's not as passionate as an interstate rival, and Alabama and Auburn can only take that to the maximum,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, with that, let's switch gears and get Neil involved with our conversation a little more.
Notice Neil and speaking too much when it's football. He's over here going, I thought this was basketball season, man. That's why I hadn't been on the podcast
We
yet.
got a couple 3 stars this year. We're really excited about it.
I think Kentucky has all 3 stars. I took a look at them.
They got 1 4-star.
1 4-star. There we go. What website are you looking at?
I'm looking at 247.
Oh, yeah, there we go. 1
Thomas
4-star.
Islands.
The one thing you need to look at in Kentucky is look outside beside the kid's name and see who's actually the recruiting contact, and it's probably going to say T. Martin all the way down the list.
Yeah, exactly.
We're very glad that we were able to retain T. Martin for another year. I don't know how much longer Kentucky will be able to retain him. I know if you listen to Chad Caldwell, he was dead set that he was coming to Vanderbilt about a month ago.
Chad Caldwell doesn't know what he's talking about, man. He's
another co-host. If you're not familiar.
Anything Vanderbilt, he'll just throw it out there. And following him is on Twitter. It's a two-way street. He puts some good information out there, but you're also going to find out about Vanderbilt women's bowling and lacrosse, and the cheerleading team added some new pom-poms. I mean, he'll tweet anything related to Vanderbilt.
He tweeted anything last night?
Just like, shaking my head. And here's the thing is he doesn't, he's just like any other fan. He doesn't. The good thing is he doesn't make a ton of excuses, but I mean he's high on a guy when they're winning, and when they're losing, he's like, this guy's a joke,
Sounds like one of our co-hosts that's talking right now.
Yeah.
Who, me? Yeah. I don't know. It's funny. It's funny because I was going to try to make that point. I'm a lot better than a lot of the fans out there, I can assure you that, because just reading some of the Tennessee message boards, 2 weeks ago, the program's in shambles, and this is the worst thing ever, and now all it's filled with is, you think if Jarnell Stokes grows 2 inches, he'll be the #1 draft pick in 2013. I'm like, this kid's played 3 games. He should be in high school right now, and everybody's talking, the Tennessee fans, you win 1 game, and they're talking about this guy going pro.
Well, let's talk about that. That makes a great transition. Tell us about the game yesterday. And it wasn't an official SEC matchup, but that's a huge win for the program.
Tennessee is just the least fun team to watch in the history of basketball. They play sloppy. It's a slow-down type game. I think that Tennessee doesn't have just an array of talent in basketball players, but they did win a game. They've played 4 games in a row where they've all been close, and they've won. Well, this is the first one they won because they lost to Kentucky, they lost to Mississippi State, they lost to Georgia, and then they won this game. So, I mean, it's good to get a win. I think Jarnell Stokes is a good player. He's one of those guys that he's not going to put up a ton of shots, but he hits most of his shots. I mean, he's got a good inside game. He can play face up. He can play with his back to the basket. He's got just a big, ugly sweeping hook that he's done 3 or 4 times, and they go in. Looks horrible on the free throw line. I just soon have Shane up there shooting free throws and Stokes right now. I hadn't seen you shoot in a while, Shane, but I can't believe you're a 80% shooter or anything.
I follow the 80-20 rule, and I'm more on the other side of that one.
Shane, don't you granny style him in, don't you? If I recall from our pickup days.
As little as I've played, probably that's the only way it's going to come close.
Defense. Could you imagine going from a high school gym shooting a free throw? Like when you're playing, you don't notice the crowd, but when you're shooting a free throw, you see all these people. You got signs.
20,000 people. Yeah.
All the heads that are out there these days.
I wouldn't be able to hit the backboard.
Yeah, I mean, and the good thing about him is that because there was a lot of people I think like Gary Parrish and some of those national writers that were kind of questioning Konzo on should he, just redshirt him this spring and then kind of go into it, but not kind of throw him to the wolves. But he's kind of proven it. I mean, he stands around a little bit on defense, and he's a little bit confused at times on offense, but he's a week and 10 days into this thing, and he's proven that he can actually play, and I think he'll just only get better. And the good thing is that you'll get an opportunity, all this game experience, and then you'll just be able to carry that on into next year. From that standpoint, it's positive. I think.
Anybody, if I didn't read that, but if anybody said that they should redshirt him, they're an idiot. That makes no sense. The guy, you have to believe he's not going to be there for 4 years. He didn't come to Tennessee to be a 4-year player. He wants to kind of follow the one and done. I mean, I think it's a blessing that Tennessee gets him for 1.5 years. So, so I think they're using him the right way, and I think he's played good. The problem is Tennessee they've got a few solid pieces, but they have no point guard, so nothing flows well. So it's going to be an ugly game, and I'll take that. I mean, I would have loved to beat Kentucky the other day. I thought they played well enough to actually win that game. They played better than Kentucky in the first half. And that was a loss. I mean, you chalk that up as a loss before the game starts. You're probably not going to win that game. But, you make it close, and you at least give some hope for a Tennessee fan for going into Rupp, which if you can't win in Thompson-Boling, it's going to be a lot tougher to win in Rupp. But at least you give some hope to where the season will go. And for a 9-10 basketball team, there's a little momentum going, and you feel like you could accomplish some things. And I think the postseason March Madness talk, that should be over. If any Tennessee fans talking about that, I try to correct them pretty quickly. Look, you're 9-10. If we want to play in the postseason, we need to do what Georgia did a couple years ago, what Mississippi State's done in the past. You've got to win the SEC championship.
Yeah,
you just got to win that tournament.
But what you do now have is hope to go to the NIT, which if you were listening to the podcast, before Stokes got here, I don't believe you were giving Tennessee any chance of even making that.
Yeah, what they got to do is they got to win at Georgia, and they didn't do that the other night. They kind of let one get
slip by.
Yeah, they let one slip by the other night, and had to be frustrating because I was watching that game, and you finally get the largest lead of the game, 5 with under 3 minutes to play, and you don't. I don't understand Skylar McBee, poor guy. He finally makes a shot in overtime, but he's a complete liability on the defensive end.
But that mustache is looking good.
It is, but it sure doesn't help him guard. And the problem is he had Gerald Robinson that I don't know how they got matched up with that deal, but
she was on Jeremy Lamb yesterday.
It's unbelievable.
I'm telling you, Skylar McBee hustles and he understands defense, and he's probably one of the smartest players Tennessee has. The problem is he has to go so fast that he over pursues and gets himself in a bad situation. Now here's the thing, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I fully blame Skylar McBee, but the way Tennessee plays defense, there's a lot of help going on, and if you don't, if you overplay somebody, you're going to have somebody step up, and then you're going to have like in one play Cam Tatum didn't get back underneath the basket, and they're giving up wide open layups. So it takes a whole team, and I agree. I'm not gonna stand up for Skylar McBee. I think he should play about 4 minutes a game. Unfortunately for Tennessee, he's in a 6-man role. So
yeah.
Well, you've got to play with what you have right now, and that's your issue.
I think Konzo Martin's doing a great job, though. I mean, obviously there's some vacancies there as far as holes in the offense, holes in the defense, but Konzo, as far as coaching is concerned, I'm not blown away by his personality. I'm not blown away by his style of play. He's got big shoes to fill with Bruce Pearl being gone. As a Kentucky fan, I love and hated Bruce Pearl. I hated him because he played us tough every time. He beat us sometimes. But I do miss that pizzazz that he brought to that program. And he not only did great for Tennessee, he did great for the entire SEC. Konzo Martin has a more laid-back, more serious tone to his personality and to his defensive play and his style of coaching, which I guess I'll get used to. But
he actually coaches defense, which Pearl really – it was all about let's see who can score the most.
I think Pearl was underrated as a defensive coach.
Yeah, if he had the horses, his press and his up-tempo game was
that's true. He did press.
Was something that he excelled at. That's what he did at Green Bay, Wisconsin, or wherever he was before Green Bay, Milwaukee, or whatever it was. But when he had the horses to actually play, he really did it. The thing I think Tennessee fans got to realize is that Konza Martin's never going to be Bruce Pearl. The thing about it is if he wins, they're still going to show up. It's just not going to be this pizzazz that you've actually seen. It's just a total different dynamic. But what's their schedule look like the next couple of bits? I know you're pulling it up here, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, which has probably played one of the tougher schedules in the nation, get a little break getting to go play at Vandy on Tuesday. They do get Auburn, and then they get to go at Kentucky. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's
an easy week.
Yeah, that's always fun. You get a stretch of Memphis, Florida, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Georgia, Connecticut, Vandy, Auburn, Kentucky again. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, that's what Tennessee does now is they don't play a week out of conference schedule, and then in the SEC, you know who you're going to have to play. So it's only going to get tougher too when you add Texas A&M and Missouri. I mean, Missouri, they're fifth in the nation, beat the number 3 team in the nation. I mean, they're going to be right up there. They'll probably go to 3rd in the country.
I would think so.
Yeah, I mean somewhere right around there.
I mean, Syracuse lost, so they're going to lose the number 1 spot.
Yeah, Kentucky I think Kentucky will go to number 1. I think Syracuse, they very well could stay number 2.
Duke lost.
Yeah, Duke lost as well.
That's their 3rd loss or 2nd loss of the. I think
it's second.
Second.
Yeah.
So they're going to drop a couple spots. So yeah, you're going to have two teams from the SEC in the top 5.
Yeah. There's a lot of shakeup in the top 25 yesterday.
Well, let's talk about another team that did some shaking up here locally, and that was the Vanderbilt game. Blair, you want to tell us a little bit of how you felt about that game?
That's good stuff. I mean, as a State fan, starting out the week at Ole Miss, we got to let Ole Miss win every once in a while just so they feel good. I mean, it's 3 in a row in football. Stansbury's 21-7 against them in basketball. We'd won 5 in a row. So I had a feeling going into that one that was going to be a tough one. We did not shoot the ball well, which was a story for Mississippi State in the first 4 SEC games. They just didn't shoot the ball well. And Ole Miss had a big post player that had a career night. So we kind of let one slip away, which set us up to go 2-3 in the conference with the loss at Vanderbilt. But I think we were down 11 at halftime and went on a 20-2 run to start the second half. And I think people, as me, I follow State, but what they did in the second half gives you kind of a glimmer of what they can be if they actually play defense and they actually play together. And there's not too many teams out there that's got a 6'11" kid that's 280 pounds that can drill a three-pointer to put you up 2, and that can actually make a backdoor pass from the top of the key to seal the victory. And he's your 4th best player. They did a really good job last night. Jalen Steele, they finally got the ball to him. He hit 4 consecutive threes, and they ended up coming out in overtime. And I know Chad Caldwell, we were talking about Vandy's point guard position the last podcast, and we talked about I just went blank on the kid's name.
Brad Tinsley.
Yeah, Tinsley. And last night in overtime, the problem with Vandy is that they just, when they get in a close game, sometimes they don't make the play that they need to make. And Tinsley last night, under 30 seconds, with the game down 1, he ends up driving into the lane with a 6'9" guy guarding him and doing a spin move, a fall away with Moultrie and Wendell Lewis. They're 6'9" and 6'11", and he ends up getting it blocked, and it was just kind of a horrible play.
Well,
so
even in regulation, didn't Vanderbilt have a chance to win?
Yeah.
I mean, Festus missed a
pretty easy. That was a great out of bounds play, and but it's one of those things where going into the week, I wanted to come out 1-2 out of the games. I just thought the Ole Miss victory was one that we had to have.
You thought it was going to be the other way around.
Yeah, I did. And in hindsight, this possibly could lift State. Unlike Tennessee, when we just went over their schedule, Mississippi State has LSU at home. They're at Florida next Saturday. But what I've been waiting on for this whole thing was State started out. I think they started out 3 out of the first 5 on the road, and they finished with like 4 out of the last 6 on the road. But in the middle there, I think they get LSU, they go to at Florida, but then they get Auburn, Arkansas, and Ole Miss at home in a 3-game stretch, and then they go back on the road against, I think, Auburn and LSU. So out of the next 7 games, they should win 6 with the Florida game being the tough one to beat. So I've been waiting for this stretch where they could, run off 5 in a row and possibly get ahead in this SEC race.
I think it's tough. I mean, I'll talk from the other side with Vanderbilt. You look at Vanderbilt, and we've talked about them saying, all right, here's a team that's going to turn it around. Looks like they're turning it around, and they're kind of making a run. And they did. I mean, they won
8 in a row.
Yeah, they run around 8 in a row, and then they play. I mean, a Mississippi State team that now you can't count that as a win, but that's one that you want to get at home. And if you want to be, I'm not saying that that's a game that they need to win to get in the tournament or anything like that. I'm saying that's a game they need to win if they want to be that top 10 team and a team that can make it to a Final Four. And they didn't win it. So we'll see where they go from there. Their losses for the most part have been one of two things. They've had just absolute no shows against Indiana State and Cleveland State, and then their other losses are ranked teams, Xavier, Louisville, and Mississippi State. So not panic time, but that's as a local guy here, as an SEC fan, that's a game I wanted to see Vandy win. And you can't win them all, so it was hold anything against them until until they start losing. They lose a couple in the SEC. You'll give them a pass on playing a good team like Mississippi State.
It was a weird game because State shot I think like 26% in the first half, down 11. Vandy was like 7 of 11 from the 3-point line. And then State goes 9 for 10 in the second half on threes, and starts on a 20-2 run where they made their 8 out of their first 9 shots. And Zealy kind of went away in the second half. Sidney played one of his better efforts, and he's a complete liability. The weird thing for me is that I always gripe about Stansbury and his coaching, and I was griping about his coaching last night because Jalen Steele hit 4 threes in a row. He hit 5 for the night, but hit 4 in a row in a 4-minute stretch. And with 4 minutes left to go in the game, he was on the bench for the last 4 minutes. When we needed a perimeter shooter out there because Boss couldn't get – when he got into the lane, he was having to kind of pitch it back out. We had nobody that could shoot threes. And so it was frustrating. We got into overtime, and Stansbury started coaching. He if y'all watched the overtime, I mean, how many, we had 4 plays where we actually ran a play and got the ball inside. So he kind of redeemed himself a little bit, and I thought at some spots actually outcoached Stallings. But it was one of those scenarios where Jenkins got a little bit cold. Jeffrey Taylor didn't touch the ball enough because he was hitting hitting.
7 for 11 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3-point range.
And again, I'll say this, Arnett Moultrie for Mississippi State, if you have a chance, and I'm a Mississippi State fan, but if you like anything about basketball, you need to go watch that dude play. He's 6'11", and he can shoot 81% from the free throw line. He gets a double-double off of the least amount of touches of anybody in the country, and he's got a high motor that just goes all the time. And he's a rebounding machine. I mean, he had 21 and 14 last night, and he doesn't touch the ball enough. But
I was going to look. What kind of shooting percentage did Mississippi State have? Do you know how well they shot the ball? Because that's where Vandy, when they've done well, they've kept their opponents to under 40% most of the time.
State was very hot in the second half. I'm pretty sure the overall statistics aren't going to be that. I mean, because they shot like 26% first half.
That's where I was trying to pull up.
But,
looks like
43.5.
Yeah. So
50% from 3-point range, 10 of 20 in threes.
But the first
that's
4,
where it hurt them.
Yeah, because Mississippi State, for the first 4 games in SEC play, they didn't shoot the ball very well, and they had shot the ball well leading into SEC play. And if you had watched Mississippi State play on the 2 road games, Ole Miss and Arkansas, they just flat out outplayed them, and Arkansas just ran them out of the gym, and then they didn't play well at all at Ole Miss. So going into that game, I didn't have any hopes whatsoever that Vanderbilt, I thought it was going to be a 10-digit loss, especially after the first half. But Vandy just kind of got lulled again for some reason. But
let's talk about your team a little bit, Shane.
Well, I was going to save them for last, but we can.
We can go through it real quick. You got Ole Miss and Georgia. Georgia's one win is against Tennessee. I don't have much insight on this. We've talked a little bit about Ole Miss. They go to 3-2 in the SEC. That's I think that's as good as they could hope to be. South Carolina, they are struggling. I think they're kind of taking the place as the doormat in all the SEC right now. Auburn beating them, by double digits, and Auburn's not a great team by any measure either. They're 2-3 in the SEC. I'll tell you one big win that we need to highlight is Arkansas. Going out of conference and taking on Michigan and winning that game in a very close game. And Michigan's a good team. I'll tell you this firsthand as a team that Tennessee played them in the NCAA tournament last year, and they have a lot of the guys back. Michigan is a very strong team.
Tim Hardaway Jr. and that whole crew.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing about Arkansas, and you saw it yesterday, and it got really slowed down. But if you watch that first half, they sped that game up and got out early. And they did that to Mississippi State and ran Mississippi State completely out of the gym. I think in Bud Walton, they're going to be really, really tough. I think that they're going to struggle on the road because they're young.
They're very young. I mean, that's what Pelfrey brought in was a lot of good talent. And you're starting to see that.
But that B.J. Young kid, the little point guard, is the real deal. And then, of course, they've got that guard play. But if they get the game sped up, those Eastern teams that have to go there, and don't have them at home, I think that's an advantage because they're one of those teams that, a Vanderbilt or a Kentucky that has to go on the road. If one of them, in that west side has to go there, that could be a difference maker in the SEC race because I think they're one of those teams that at home is going to be very difficult to beat.
Kentucky's already been there, it was a home game for Kentucky.
They went.
So.
But they look, first half, like you said, they looked great.
Yeah.
And Michigan just didn't look like they belonged on the same court. And then they just flipped it around that second half, and Michigan just dominated them, did everything they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it came down to just, getting it out at the end for Arkansas.
But that's the youth that Arkansas has.
And that's what you got to do when you're a young, exactly what you're saying, like Arkansas. That's how you have to win those type games.
And they got guard. Yeah, they got guard play that's really good. They're kind of like, Tennessee now has the post players, but they're more of a guard dominant team.
But what that really is a testament to how good they might be, next year maybe, is that they were able to hold on because, like you've already alluded to, Michigan was a really good team that came in there.
And it could be matchup, too. Michigan plays a lot of guards, too. They're a smaller team as well.
If I'm not mistaken, that game stayed in the 60s, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, because they slowed it down the second half because Arkansas, I want to say, was in the high 30s at halftime.
46-33
at halftime. Yeah, so they slowed it down. Michigan, Beeline or whatever his name is, just basically completely slowed that game down.
Correct.
And then let's touch on a team that's just quietly doing well, and it's consistent, and we've all said that they're going to be good, is Florida. They're taking care of the teams they're supposed to take care of, and I don't think anybody gave them any thought that they might lose to LSU.
Yeah, and they really haven't hit the meat of their schedule yet. They had Tennessee at home, and then they haven't really had, a Kentucky Vanderbilt. I don't believe.
No, they still
have.
They still got to play Kentucky twice, and I think Vanderbilt
and then
twice.
They got Mississippi State at home, and I think they still got to play Alabama. Yeah, Billy Donovan's got it going.
So
Florida's good. They still have I think the best guard combination with Irvin Walker and Kenny Boynton. That they are very, very strong, and what's unbelievable is they go as those two guys go a lot of times, and that's tough. Because those are both streaky players.
Yeah.
But they played well enough to get it done. They beat LSU handily. They beat them by 12 points. So.
Yeah,
they got that first one to Tennessee, and they've run off 4 in a row.
I think we talked about that earlier. It's going to be all about their big men and how they develop. They got Patrick Young, but it's kind of the depth, the 2 or 3 that are there to kind of help contribute.
Patrick Young, and that's one guy. You're exactly right. Is he
he's a sophomore? Yeah,
he's a sophomore, but this guy was coming in a 5-star recruit, was supposed to be just a day one contributor, and I just really still hadn't seen his dominant performances.
Right.
And
he's athletic as can be. He's 6'8", 6'9", so he's not a 7-footer or 6'11". But
I feel like they're just missing a little something. In the last few years, they've had 3 or 4 big men that you could just kind of count on just for quite a bit. And Patrick Young, there's a lot expected on him, and I don't know that he's performed in my opinion.
I'm interested to see how they do on the road when they get into the meat of that East side of things because. I think it's still. The thing about it in basketball, your guards can dictate a lot. They can control tempo, and and do those things. So you can win a lot with those two guys that you got back there. When they're hitting, they're going to be pretty tough to beat. But it's going to be interesting to see how they actually get the big men going.
All right, so I think that's all the SEC except Kentucky
And Alabama.
Alabama. Yeah, and Alabama's lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Did y'all watch the Vanderbilt-Alabama game the other night? Kind of flipping back, Vanderbilt beat them pretty handily. Did y'all watch any of that? Did y'all see the technical?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, Anthony Grant's the maddest guy I've ever seen in my life, and that is one guy I wouldn't get mad. It took they were down 20 in the second half, and he just lost it. And I think 3 players. He got away from 3 players that tried to pull him back, and then the coaches came onto the court. His 3 coaches, he pushed and escaped his 3 coaches, and one of his coaches hit a chair and fell over and back behind the bench. And he met the ref at half court. It was the white of his eyes. You could just tell because, that guy's a pretty calm demeanor guy. He's kind of got that stern
I missed that part of it. Was it a warranted tirade? Or
yeah, it's the same white-haired ref that I hate. There's about 8 of them in the SEC that I hate because
are they all white-haired?
Just about it. Then you get old TV Teddy, but the game wasn't going his way. I think he was frustrated. They weren't shooting the ball well. They weren't defending. Vandy was up 20, and then they actually made a run there and got it within about 10 and tried to make it a ball game, but Vandy moved away. But, that's kind of disappointing for Alabama because I thought that was the team that I still think that's the team that State's going to have the hardest time with on the western side of things. And it's, one of those 5 that we think is going to be in the NCAA tournament. But they're on a 3-game slide that they need to get corrected real quick.
They manhandled Kentucky yesterday.
Yeah.
Inside, they threw Anthony Davis around like he was nothing.
They did, and the crazy thing is Tony Mitchell, who is one of their better players, if not their best player. I think he's better than Jermichael Green. His last 3 games have just been, I think it's coincided with their losses, but, he didn't even score against Vandy.
He only had 6
and then he had
Kentucky.
6 yesterday. He fouled out with 6 minutes to go. And so they got to get him corrected real quick because he's a 6'7" monster when he gets going.
Yeah, they didn't have an answer for Green yesterday. He posted everybody up and just did that little runner hook and just killed them.
Well, but you get balance. Look at what you get from Kentucky. We've talked about we say depth, and they still don't play a lot of depth. They played 7 players, but when I say depth, it's not the John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins show. They've got 6 kids that can go out there and contribute, and a guy that can win you a game. Look at the scoring. You've got 15 for Terrence Jones, 13 for Kid Gilchrist, 11 for Darius Miller, 11 for Anthony Davis, 10 for Marcus Teague, and 14 for Deron Lamb. So 6 guys in double digits. That's something that they haven't had. And here's the kicker. They played 7 players. You're thinking, you might be able to get away with playing 7. Wiltshire only played 6 minutes, so they really only played 6 guys. And Shane, I'm telling you've been the guy that's talking about this, and it worries you. And I think it should. It's hard to have that 6-man rotation. I know Brett. I agree with what he says about TV timeouts, and they shouldn't be tired. But when you're playing in a tournament style and you're playing back-to-back games, pretty much. When you don't have any depth, when something's not working, you don't have that guy on the bench that can really. You know how they always show bench scoring as a stat? There's a reason, because it's kind of unexpected points, and when you only play 6 players, it's hard to get a lot of bench scoring. So
but I tell you what, though, if you watch the last 5 years, that hasn't been as dominant as it has been. I think your brother did make a good point. I think the problem that you worry about is a possible injury. I think that's what worries the coaches.
Or Brett brings up a good idea: foul trouble.
Yeah,
that's another.
That's a kicker there.
Think about Tony Mitchell going, like you said, Tony Mitchell out with 6 minutes left to play. If that was Kentucky and that was Davis, the roles were reversed and he's out with 6 minutes to play, that's a whole different ballgame, especially the way Kentucky was playing. They shot 43% from the field. And
But, if you look at all the teams, though, kind of going on that, look at all the teams. How many does Tennessee play? They don't play more than 8, probably.
But they still have that one guy that they can go to, that
Right.
extra guy on the bench that if something happens, it's not a total destructive. I mean, that's total destruction for Kentucky.
And I think in an NCAA tournament style where you've got 2 games and you got a day between each game, and the amount of rest that you get with the TV timeouts and the spurts, I think it's okay. I think the foul trouble is the big kicker, and then obviously a fluke injury or something where you're going to miss a guy for 3 games or something, rolls an ankle. I think that's the problem.
Their depth is quality, though. Yeah. I mean, they got 2 guys. They're both All-Americans, McDonald's All-Americans too. I mean, they're sitting on 7. I'd take those 7 over.
And Vargas didn't even see a single minute.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the deal. You can say, "Oh man, I'm pumped about Wilcher," but the guy, if he's good enough, I mean, if he's a McDonald's All-American, he'd be playing. That's all there is to it. I just don't think
in that lineup.
Yeah, I think that you make minutes for those guys. I think there's I think there are a few minutes that you can give a guy that if he's that talented of a player.
More than 6.
I don't disagree. There's a reason Tennessee and I'll answer your question. They played 11 guys yesterday in a close game, and I think that is to a detriment. I think that. I've always said this. If you've got a player like John Wall or you got a player like DeMarcus Cousins, give them 33, 34 minutes a game. I don't want those guys sitting out that much. I'm just saying there's a big difference between only playing 6 guys, versus like 8. When you're exactly right. If somebody gets injured, I know. I don't think that Wilcher can be counted on for significant minutes at this point.
Not yet.
Is that a problem for Kentucky? No, I don't think so, because you're exactly right. They've got enough really good players where they don't have to worry about that. And I think you're fine with Vargas in there. Vargas, I mean, he'd be playing more minutes on other teams.
But look at the tournament last year. That's what did them in. I mean, really, who did they lose to? I forgot. Kentucky.
They lost they made it to the Final Four last year, right?
They lost to
but
UConn
it was a matchup issue, and they got in foul trouble. And they didn't have that extra person that had the experience to gel with those guys when they got on the court, to have those extra minutes of experience that you get throughout the season. I'm not saying that the 6 people we don't have are not top notch and that it's not hard to make room for them. I'm saying that against Alabama, when you've struggled the whole game, I don't think either team had a lead by more than 6 or 7 points. I mean, it was pretty close the whole way. This is a game where you don't expect to see that. But there's games where you've got a 15, 18, 20-point lead at times. Get somebody some playing time. Even if it starts getting close, take them out. But you got to get Wilcher a little more playing time. You got to get Vargas, John Hood, who I don't know what's going on with him, but, I mean,
John Hood, that's the guy I love to talk about, because he was when he had McDonald's All-American as well. I mean, he was a big recruit as well.
We talk about some point guard issues with Teague. Why not giving him a couple minutes there when the game's somewhat in control? Why not get a little balance there so that you've got that experience in game time situation, so that if something were to happen, you've got that to fall back on. You've got that safety net that Calipari lives without. He does not have a safety net.
Here's my favorite thing is we can argue about Tennessee and their coaching style, and very well, should they do this or should they do that. We can also argue about a 19-1 Kentucky team. I mean,
number one team in the nation.
Yeah, they're about to be number 1 in the nation. We're like, he's crazy. He should be playing him more. And it all stems to the fact that tell me what you Kentucky fans say. We don't measure success by.
Well, he said it by
banners or something. Yeah, we don't hang SEC championship banners or something like that. So
he said Calipari set the that bar as soon as he got here in his first speech. He says, I'm here to be measured by championship banners being hung. And he's talking about NCAA. He's not talking about SEC, because we got a lot of those. It's all about the NCAA banners, and that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking about right now. I'm looking about what can Kentucky do today to make themselves better prepared for the tournament, and that's what I'm not seeing.
I like it. I think I got to fire him.
Yeah,
let's fire him. Let's get Bruce Pearl in there.
But I think what you have is
I don't think that's a bad move. I think that's
totally
fine.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Bruce Pearl's a wonderful coach.
Would he wear a blue jacket or a white jacket?
Yeah.
Kentucky blue, man. I'll jump on the bandwagon day one. Wherever Bruce Pearl goes, that's where I'm following.
He's a great coach.
That's awesome.
What were you saying, Blair?
I think it all comes back to the tournament that you're actually talking about, and the way that they actually slow that game down. I mean, the way that the NCAA tournament is actually played, there's so much time with timeouts and TV timeouts. It's even more than even a regular game. I don't think it's
And they do so much conditioning.
Issue.
I mean, in today's world of sports medicine, they know how to condition these players. I'm not talking about how they're going to get winded and their legs are going to just be so.
I think what Kentucky's deal is that you got to be confident that a Wilcher can come in and play you 12 straight minutes if one of your guys gets in 2 fouls in the first half and make it to halftime. And I think you'll have that with those players because you see that constantly throughout the NCAA tournament. Some guy coming off the bench and scoring 6 points and playing 11 minutes because their star got in trouble.
Neil, you got anything else you want to add? I know you're a Kentucky fan and you watch every game.
Yeah, right now I love Kid Gilchrist. He's killing it. I mean,
is.
He's by far, I think, the most impactful. I think over Anthony Davis, who's probably the best looking man in the NCAA right now. Anthony Davis.
Handsome or like a playing one?
Oh my goodness, handsome. That guy is a good looking fella. And
he's no Skylar McBee.
I know. But that guy is probably the MVP. Kid Gilchrist. I can't even say his name today. And for Kentucky, I think Calipari's going to do what he does. He's going to narrow it down to 6. Might have Wilshire come off the bench occasionally in the NCAAs. I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't, as far as depth in the NCAA tournament, especially when you're dealing with UK's depth.
Yeah, but
quality.
And I hope I'm wrong, but the last 2 years, were we expected to win the tournament either year? No. Did we have the talent to do it? Possibly. But each year it was a matchup issue and a foul trouble issue that really hurt them and put them out of the tournament on a game that they probably should have won.
Yeah.
They could have lost games earlier in the tournament and Kentucky fans wouldn't have been upset, or at least I would not have been.
Last year they lost to a red-hot UConn team that everybody in that tournament should have beat. I mean, they just –
yeah, they were 9th in the Big East when they entered the tournament. So
they shouldn't even been in the tournament.
Yeah, they had to win 5 games in the.
Yeah, I mean, there's just something. It's always a matchup problem when you lose.
Yeah, the problem 2 years ago was that you had a team that couldn't shoot.
Yeah,
and West Virginia was the team that actually had the scenario where they could actually make you shoot, and you guys actually had a cold night. But that was kind of the thing that was always the little caveat out there the whole year with Wall and those guys was that if they got into a match where they had to actually shoot 18-footers, they were going to have a hard time.
Pack them in, let them shoot, and it showed that night. We had Dotson back then. Remember that guy?
Yeah, Andre.
The most overrated three-point shooter in history. I don't even know where he's at. I care less where he's at. But had we had Lamb or someone like that, it would have been a different story. But here's living in the past.
Yeah. And then the West Virginia guy, Mazzoli or whatever his name was, that had a broke shoulder or something.
And Jones, who's still there, I watched the West Virginia game. Sorry to talk outside the SEC.
We're okay.
But,
we do that sometimes.
Yeah, he's still there. What is he, an eighth year senior? Oh, my goodness. He's been playing forever.
Drew keeps an eye on those players. You should know all about those guys that like to.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how long he's been in school, but you kind of follow those kids. Like Cam Tatum at Tennessee's been there for 7 years now, I believe. Ready for him to go though. Yeah. Usually it's the other way around. It's I'll just go back to the ones Jeff Shepard played at Kentucky for 9 years, and
that's who I was setting you up for right there.
And what's the other kid?
Richie Farmer.
No, I can't remember the guy's name. I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Rex Chapman.
No, he was Jamil Martinez. Jamil Martinez was there for at least 11.
Yeah, I think
he started from like 88 to like
I think he was
99.
38 when he graduated.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And then in football, the go-to is Chris Dorian at Florida, who was there in 3 decades.
Oh, he killed us.
80s, 90s, and 2000s. And that's a fact. He played 3 decades.
That's a heartbreaking name you just brought up.
Well, one other thing I'll say is congratulations to Anthony Davis. I mean, he's leading the nation right now in blocks and just is going to shatter the all-time block record at UK. I mean, he had to get 2 blocks against in Arkansas to beat the UK record. And how many more games do we have left in the SEC? 10 more games, maybe.
Yeah.
So let's see how many more games.
How close is he to like 170? Yeah, because Venardo had the single season and the career. Which is just crazy to even think about when you talk about numbers, because one of the Ole Miss's players just set the school record for 4 year, like career record was like 170 something blocks, and that's what Bernardo was doing in a year.
I don't think Anthony's going to get the career record.
No, he's not getting a career. But single season, I think he's at like 100 blocks right now or something.
Season total in blocks, he's at 93.
Yeah, so he's not going to get there to the 170 range, I don't think.
He's got 11 more games left. So
he's averaging, what, 5?
Yeah,
so that's roughly about 55. So if he goes into
does that count regular
games,
season?
Does it count tournaments? And
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, it's out there.
I'd be interested to know what that is. I should know it, but
it's a Mississippi State record, right?
Yeah, Bernardo had like 540-something
Goodness.
career blocks.
Well, we're not going to finish in under an hour, but we're going to get to the open mic segment under an hour, or right at. So, Blair, you want to kick off the open mic here? Or was there anything else in basketball before we start to wrap things up a little bit? No? All right. Blair, you want to tell us a little bit?
I don't really have much on other than we allowed Ole Miss to win, so they're excited and feeling good this week. And but I'm excited about our win yesterday, and hopefully we'll pick it up from that standpoint. But my Twitter handle is @BlairSmiley SMYLY. That's about it. I haven't seen any movies or anything, Drew.
That's bad, because I'm trying to think. I don't really have anything new. I'd love to add in on somebody's. I usually golf on rants, and y'all just kind of look at me like, all right, you're crazy. But I'd love for one of y'all to golf on a rant and let me chime in on it. So I don't know what else there is. You can follow me at DrewYoung20. I'm excited about the basketball win last yesterday.
It was last week.
Yeah. But I'll talk about the NFL. It's once again very disappointing. I think we're going to get a crappy Super Bowl. Wanted to see, I really wanted to see the Saints in it. Just I think they're a very fun team to watch. I enjoy watching Drew Brees. I think that their receivers are really good. Of course, I'm one of those fickle fans that, I'm not the guy that says I love those defensive battles. I didn't really love that 6-3 Alabama-LSU game. We had one of those championship games in college football. I was excited to see kind of more of an exciting game, and we can definitely get that with New England and the Giants. But I'm afraid we're poised to just get the brother Super Bowl of the 49ers.
That'll be a disaster.
And Ravens. Yeah, and it's going to be just
and just like the BCS National Championship, we've done that once this year, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And somebody said, like, why is there nobody in an uproar about a rematch in pro football versus college football? And what people don't get is nobody was really that upset with. They didn't think Alabama didn't deserve to go to the championship game. Everybody's just pissed off at the whole system of how they get there, and it's once again people voting. And here's a question: I won't take credit for this. This is something my brother Brett, who's been on the podcast numerous times, has said. He might have actually said it on the podcast. Name one other sport where the championship game or it's voted on.
Yeah.
What else is voted on?
The Olympics, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's not really voted. Like it's everybody at least gets a chance to participate.
Absolutely.
You compete to get to.
That would be like all right, gymnastics. We don't have a lot of time, so for the championship round, we're going to go with Natalie something or other. I can't think of. I couldn't even pull a Nadia Comaneci and Bruce Jenner, who's a decathlete.
Well, if you actually
isn't Natalie an ice skater too?
It could be.
I mean, the other thing to add to that, Drew, is I heard a stat this week that last week in the divisional playoff games, the 41 million people watched, I believe, or something like that, which is insane because 25 million people watched the national championship game that was on Monday night that had nothing else against it. Last Sunday there was like 3 other games. So one of the games watched 41 million people. So you tell me that a playoff system in football wouldn't garner more viewership. I mean, just money.
There's something else out there. There's something that we don't know about because when they say that it's a money thing, I don't get that. And here's what makes me mad too.
I think it's a money thing from the bowl side. That's
the problem. It's the bowl people
have so much control, and they're afraid that they're going to lose out on money if they go to this playoff system.
Well, who cares, man? I'm not worried about the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl.
I'm not
Why
disagreeing
is the
with
I mean, there's plenty of money out there. It's just people are afraid to change. So many people are afraid to change, and And here's what makes me mad is we're going to get a playoff. I'm telling you, we'll get a playoff, and it'll be sooner rather than later. But here's what makes me mad is they'll go, all right, we're going to do a 14 playoff. Why? No, let's 16 team playoff minimum. I'd take a 64. I want as many as you can get, but they won't do it. They'll start off with a 4 or maybe an 8. Yeah, just start a playoff.
We'll have a 5-game regular season.
Well, I don't want that because Tennessee probably wouldn't make the 64-team playoff, and I'd like to see them play. But yeah, we won't do it won't be a 16-team playoff. It'll be a 4-team playoff, and then that's better than no playoff. But I still think that's.
I think going from the old bowl system where you would have never even got a national championship matchup. The number 1 team would have been tied into the Rose Bowl, and the other team would have been tied into the Orange Bowl, and they would have never played. That's what we always ran into, like the Penn State team that goes 12-0, it doesn't get it, and that type of stuff. And I think the BCS was better than that because we at least got people to actually play on the field, but it's still a flawed system. And I think a +1 is another step to
the ultimate goal.
To the ultimate goal. And I think the presidents, it's the whole deal. If they could actually say it's a 4-game, it's a +1, and it's going to be there for the next 10 years, I think they'd sign it yesterday. But because they think that that's just one more step into actually open up an 8-team and a 16-team, and then it's going to create even more what they concern as.
Is the concern that there won't be, like if you have a 16-team playoff, 16-team playoff, there won't be other bowl games? I'm fine. Just have bowl games, but then also have a 16-team playoff.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, I don't really know what the issue is. I don't know if it's, because they're losing money on bowls right now. So, like, if a school goes, Mississippi State's going to make like $120,000 on their bowl game to Music City. Most teams, and that's just because they actually sold out their allotment, or SEC teams. They barely break even on these bowl games. So I think that's what the presidents and them are looking at, is that if you actually add that times, because now they're in the situation where they're getting closer to going 13 regular season games with playoff systems, from a larger SEC of 14 teams.
They actually had the nerve to bring up the student athlete again, like a few weeks ago. Like they consolidated all these conferences. People were like, we're getting Texas A&M, Missouri, and Southeastern Conference, and they're going, oh, we got to care about, make sure the kids are taken care of, the student athlete.
Make sure they're getting plenty of study time.
It's all about money, and there's some secret revenue stream that the BCS is getting paid very well, and the presidents something's going on, like you said earlier, that we don't know exactly what, but there's a pretty strong draw to that.
Well, I'm pretty excited. We got the Daytona 500 coming up, and their new way they do it is we're voting in Dale Jarrett, Kyle Busch, and Darrell Waltrip. Those will be the 3 guys racing for it, man. And then we're going to go ahead and vote in for the World Series this year, and it's the Milwaukee Brewers, and I think the Oakland A's actually won the other vote. So they go there too. Oh yeah, Moneyball once again doesn't deserve an Oscar. It's not that good of a movie. It's very overrated. I think I've had this on a podcast before, but with Oscar talk coming up and people talking about it.
You're just not a Sorkin fan, are you?
I love Aaron Sorkin. I think it's great. It's just the problem is it's completely unrealistic. Do not try to sell me that Scott Hatteberg was the reason that they were winning. It was Miguel Tejada, Eric Chavez, and
steroids.
It was probably those 2 guys were on steroids. I didn't talk about that at all. And it was their pitching staff. Any movie that talks about the Oakland A's being a good baseball team and doesn't mention Mark Mulder, Tim Hudson, or Barry Zito during that time, it's bad. It doesn't make sense. You can't overlook that as a sports fan.
Well, now, what do you think about the Social Network?
The Social Network? I still don't understand Facebook. I don't understand how it's worth so much money. Y'all have told me this on a podcast before, how they make money. I'm sure advertising, but when I go on Facebook, it's not like I see a big Subway banner or anything like that. I don't know how they make so much money. I think that this is getting off on the movie. I thought the movie was fine. It was enjoyable.
But you like the book better?
Yeah, the book was much better.
All right, another Sorkin film, taking a good book and changing it, right?
Yeah, but it was a fine movie. I mean, I enjoyed it.
See, I'm going to make you all of a sudden realize you just don't like Sorkin films.
Well, we'll keep on going. What else is a Sorkin film out
I don't
there?
know. West Wing? You did the West Wing, didn't
West Wing was good. Sports Night, great. Wasn't that the Sorkin?
yeah.
So
that
he
was a
just
great
needs to
TV
stick
show.
he needs to stick to TV. Is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
No, I just think that the story needs to be told more. Here's the problem: is Moneyball. If they'd have just done a documentary on the A's and just the numbers and still talked about the good players, I would have loved it. But then everybody else would have hated it. So he did the right thing by making a movie that
Make it a love story.
yeah, making it a story that the casual sports fan or the girls who hate baseball can go watch with their husbands. But when me and 3 other guys that are in our fantasy baseball league that just spend way too much time talking about baseball watching, we all going, that's bullcrap, man. Mark Mulder had a
can't believe
8.3 VORP that year. I mean, they didn't
Jonah
even talk about
Hill
him.
was up for something. He had like 6 lines in that movie. It seemed like.
And Jonah Hill, if he wins anything for this and didn't win anything for Superbad,
Oh,
that's just
I know.
wrong,
Yeah,
man.
I know.
There's
You
so
can't
much
take
funny.
him-
It was so
I
much
can't
better in
take him as
Superbad.
a computer geek when he was in Superbad. So.
No, he said like 8 lines, I
Yeah.
think, and expressionless the whole time.
Yeah.
But
There's no way that performance was better than Superbad. 0%.
All right, Neil. If you haven't figured, the open mic time is when we can talk about anything we want to.
all right. Well,
Anything you
And
want to add?
Make sure to plug yourself too.
oh yeah.
All these
If you
trillions of
haven't
listeners.
bought Luke Bryan's new CD,
And what would that tell-
Tailgates and Tan Lines, I have song number 10, Tailgate Blues, on there. Make sure you go out and get there. I'm sure there's a million people listening right now.
They're illegally downloading it as we speak.
Damn it.
Those BitTorrents got us again.
And last night we saw Contraband, which was not my choice to see, but they vetoed me. I wanted to see the new Clooney movie, but they all vetoed me.
What's the
Descendants? Or
Yeah, I've
something
seen
like
that. Was Contraband good? That's Mark Wahlberg, right?
It is exactly what I expected from a Mark Wahlberg. He saves the world and
Takes his shirt off.
takes his shirt off. He's got guns.
Yeah, the
And
wives went to this,
My
didn't they?
wife was very excited when she got out of there, and so yes, it worked in one aspect of my life. But as far as movies are concerned, I would have rather seen Chipwrecked or something like that. So that's all I've got. For
I love that you
appreciate-
wanted to go see The Descendants, which is just the saddest movie in the history of the world. So.
Well, see, I didn't know it was.
And see, I'm the one that vetoed.
Oh, okay.
So for those who don't know, I vetoed that movie because I did not want to be depressed and bored, and because it's a pretty slow movie. Because
you would have enjoyed the movie if you like movies. You would have thought it was very well acted, but you would have been sitting there just with a scowl on your face, like you're about to cry the entire time. 'cause
I wanted
it's
to
just
go
all
to,
sad.
I wanted to go to a movie and not have to think. So that's why I chose.
I love that a smart guy like you. You're at that point in your age. That's what kids do to you, Shane. You just get to the point where when you're away from them, you don't want to think. You just want to sit there
Just
and
turn
watch.
the brain off.
I did, yeah.
Eat some popcorn. And
Well, that's what we
watch
did in Contraband.
And watch Mark Wahlberg without a shirt on, Shane. That's always been one of your pastimes.
It was, yeah. I pull up old YouTube clips of Marky Mark,
And the Funky Bunch.
Yeah, we had Feel the Vibrations on the way. But I appreciate y'all letting me sit in. I'm glad I could bring some very deep insight to the SEC recruiting and basketball schedules. So,
Well, we thank you for coming in on such short notice. Can they follow you anywhere?
absolutely, I'm on Twitter. Don't have much to say, but I'm on there. It's at Neil Medley, NeilMedley.
And if they want to get a taste of some of your music?
Yeah, I've got a Reverb page, a Reverb Nation page. There's about 10 songs on there. I don't know how recent they are, but
Can they get that?
it's all new to you if you've never been there.
They can get to that through Facebook too.
Yeah,
Correct?
Facebook, YouTube, I don't know, Twitter, all those social
NeilMedley.com.
networks. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, I am at P. Shane Bailey is my Twitter. Thank you all so much for listening into the podcast. I'll close with a couple of things. I think I'm not a one to brag, and we've come this far past football season, but I'd be remiss if we went this whole time and didn't talk about who had the best record in our football picks. Did anybody happen to look at that and see what happened there?
I'm pretty sure I made a big comeback and won in the bowl games, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, that's a negative. I think you did improve a little bit, but it came down to me and Brett, and I took him by a game. So my overall record was basically 2-1. So for every time I lost, I had 2 winners out there in the football picks, and that was against the spread. So
How much real money did you put on that?
0.
That's very unfortunate.
And so, I'll also cover our basketball picks. And, I've said it, I think I've said this on the podcast before. The only way we can figure out how to do this is to just go straight up. So we're not picking against the spread on this, only because to look at a week out, it's impossible to try to find any type of spread for these games to try to pick against those. And so far, Blair's got the early lead. He's tied with a couple people, I think. Yourself and Chad Caldwell both are at 15-5, another 2-1 type record out there. I'm followed closely, tied and
what's a little better, 3-1.
3-1.
3-1. That's all right.
There we go. Well, then that would be my record. I was like 3-1 in football.
I think you're 2-1. I think you were like 67%.
Yeah. Okay.
If you were 3-1, that'd have been incredible. I mean, 67% winning percentage is incredible. 75% winning percentage, and you wouldn't be doing this. You'd be having a call-in show.
I'd have an 800
Call me
number.
now, right now. Get the lock of the week.
I am 14-6. Drew's 12-8. Brett's 13-7. Like I said, Chad and Blair both 15-5. Mark Wisner's 12-8, who's been on here, and I'll have to throw out some props to Trent Satterfield. He's making a comeback. Basketball must be his sport. I don't think he was.
We don't get his picks till the first 2 or 3 games have been played, so he gets a 3-0 head start every week.
Good news is it's games like Kentucky, so he's not going against the.
See, I felt bad when I forgot my picks, and there was a minute left, and Kentucky had like a 4-point lead, and I went ahead and picked Tennessee just because I felt bad. Not Trent. He went ahead and said, "I'll take the Wildcats."
Yeah, he's 15-5, so congrats for him to try to redeem himself, because he wasn't even close to 500 in the football picks. So with that, guys, we're going to call this roundtable done.